Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Trees, and I lead the Knowledge Management Research Program for APQC. And as we all know, the last year or two have brought big changes to the world of work, the rise of virtual collaboration and virtual working being one of the biggest ones. And that has a profound impact on knowledge management and communities of practice specifically. We've seen some KM teams who've had to take communities that were traditionally met face to face in a meeting room and move them online. And then other communities that had traditionally been virtual were competing with all of these different virtual meetings and virtual events. And it's just harder to get people to engage. So we thought that this would be a really good time to look at some of our virtual collaboration research and the implications for communities and ways to engage virtual communities of practice. So we'll start with some of the virtual collaboration research. And this is based on our virtual collaboration Rules of the Road survey that we ran earlier in 2021. And I'm going to start with the good news. Overall, 3/4 of the 800 participants in the survey said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with virtual collaboration in their workplace. People are mostly okay interacting online and they see real benefits. A lot of the top benefits are perceived efficiency gains. The most obvious is time saved not commuting, but people also feel like discussions are more to the point with less small talk, and they're able to get more done in a shorter period of time. And then interestingly, nearly a third also list among the top benefits that it's easier to share and reuse knowledge when they're working virtually. And I feel like this is a real opportunity for virtual communities to capitalize on. People are already used to collaborating maybe with their teams or their functions in the online environment. And it may be easier to take some of those same behaviors and understanding of collaboration apps and use them for community interaction as we move forward. And when you scratch the surface and ask people how effective virtual is for various activities, you do get more of a mixed bag. And there are also some very clear challenges. The biggest issues that we see are that it's harder to have that water cooler chat when you learn and share things by bumping into each other in the hallway. And it's also harder to do some of that really complex work like innovation and problem solving. And that's particularly true when the work requires a lot of social trust among the participants. In the next three challenges that we see here, I really lump under this category of collaboration chaos. Organizations have too many overlapping and disconnected platforms and opportunities to collaborate without enough guidance and training about how to navigate that environment and really use it successfully. So that's the backdrop in terms of how employees are experiencing virtual collaboration and work. But what does it really mean in terms of managing and engaging those employees in virtual communities of practice? We know that at least some employees feel that it's easier to share knowledge and collaborate when they're working virtually. But we also know that strong communities strive to innovate and solve problems and build relationships among members. And those are harder activities traditionally to transfer online. And we also know that employees are completely overwhelmed by the collaboration landscape they're encountering right now. There are just too many meetings and channels and pings, and they're struggling to make sense of it all and filter it so that they can work effectively and be productive. So, putting our 20 years of community research together with the virtual collaboration trends that we're seeing, I would point to 4 fundamentals for leading virtual communities in this moment. The first is to really reinforce the reasons why members should participate in a community. Why is this worthy of their precious time and focus in this, moments of constant change and crises? And then second, provide meeting objectives and agendas for community meetings up front. So it's easy for members to evaluate what's on offer and to make good decisions for them personally about whether it's worthy of distraction. The third is to make meetings varied and interactive. And this is probably the most important. The bar has really been raised here in terms of making those meetings two-way and making people feel involved. And then finally, helping members navigate the collaboration landscape, both in and beyond the context of regular community meetings. So we're going to start with reinforcing the reasons why members should participate. And whether a community is new or it's been around for a while, you have to continually reassess and ensure that it's providing value to members. That's true whether it's face-to-face or virtual or in any format. No matter what you do, no one's going to show up if they're not seeing a benefit from participation. The community needs to be teaching them something valuable or doing work that they see as helpful or important. And if you think about how much has changed in terms of business strategy and priorities, not to mention the employee experience over the past 18 months, it's really possible that member needs have changed, and the COP may need to change to accommodate and meet those needs. So once you're sure that you have a sound value proposition for the community, the second part is to communicate it. You got to shout it from the rooftops. Especially when people are working virtually, you're getting so much digital messaging, emails and invitations and updates and chats. It can be really hard to cut through the noise and get noticed. So you really have to be smart as possible with your COP marketing. So this graphic is from SwageLock, and I've included it here because it's an example of aligning your community to the business and individual employees' needs. SwageLock has had communities for a while, but for a long time, it wasn't getting as much traction from the communities as it wanted. And that changed when the KM team identified the right problem to go out and solve with communities. It realized that IT was really struggling to implement SAP Business One across SwageLock's sales and service centers. So KM partnered with IT to build a community around their SAP B1 implementation, which gave each of their sales and service centers access to relevant content about the implementation, as well as lessons learned from previous centers that had already gone through the process. So it was very timely, just-in-time information. And they had really good community management. They had KPIs, they had a dedicated community leader, they had knowledge maps, but it was all more effective because it was focused on this urgent need and problem within the business. So engagement tends to fall in place if your community is rallied around an urgent business need. We've seen that a lot over the last year or two. Communities with that ear to the ground who provided training on virtual work or how to tackle a new business strategy or supply chain problems, they've really been the most active and successful over the COVID period. So assuming that you've providing value through your community, the other side, as I said, is that marketing and promotion. And you have to communicate frequently through many channels and with a compelling message. I've done a whole presentation on KM communications before, but today I'm just going to give you a few highlights, a few bullets. So metrics and data are important to leaders, but when you're messaging to actual community participants, success stories are absolutely the best marketing tool that you have. You need to gather examples of how your community has helped teams or projects and lead with those stories when you encourage people to join or to get more involved in the COP. You need to tell them what's in it for them, and hopefully it's going to be something that makes their work easier or enables them to grow and advance in their careers. And it's particularly compelling when they hear those stories from fellow community members, or people out in the business. If a peer tells them, hey, I got involved with this community and it really helped with XYZ, it allowed me to find this opportunity, that's gold. That will really help you with engagement. And in terms of the communication mode, what we find is that you really need an omni-channel strategy. Especially with virtual work, not everyone is going to read every message that passes their eyes. Some people read email, some people only read emails on Tuesday morning. Some people barely read email, but they'll see intranet updates or they pay attention to their enterprise social posts. Some people really will not pay attention to anything unless there's a video or an infographic. I think the internet has taught us that. So you have to be creative and multifaceted versus just sending out one email before each meeting. And the final thing that I want to mention here is that if people are struggling with virtual work, you may be able to market your community in a way that, is really about getting more work done while working virtually. We took a subset of people who said that virtual collaboration is effective for some of those tough asks. The water cooler chat, the brainstorming and innovation, change management. And those people were significantly more likely to say that communities of practice are critical to their work. So if people are having trouble with creative work, if they're missing those serendipitous exchanges, you may be able to use that gap to sell them on community engagement. If you facilitate those activities through the community, and you have to actually do it, and then if you market them the right way as well. So our second topic is really around providing meeting objectives and agendas up front. And this is really straightforward. I'm not going to belabor it, but I am going to make a case for it. People are struggling to balance their work lives and figure out what they need to do, what they want to do, and what they can let go of. And that's always been true, but it's especially true with virtual work, removing some of the normal boundaries people have had. So it's more important than ever to give community members a clear idea of what's going to happen in each meeting and what they're going to get out of attending. And when we did our research on virtual collaboration last year, one of my biggest takeaways is that people are in more meetings than ever. The meeting frequency is exhausting to people, and they really want more upfront information about the meetings they're invited to so they can decide whether they should attend and when they need to push back. That was the number one change that people said they would like to see to make virtual collaboration more effective for them. Not fewer meetings per se, but established criteria for virtual meetings, such as an agenda shared ahead of time. And a community meeting is often not required attendance, so I think it's particularly important to give people the context they need up front in terms of who's speaking, what's going to happen, and what they personally or the organization are going to get out of that meeting. That's part of marketing the meeting, and if everyone comes in with clear objectives, it leads to more efficient and focused meetings, which encourages people to come back because that's part of your user experience. So the third thing that I want to talk about here, is the meetings themselves and how to make them varied, engaging, and fun. And honestly, I don't think anything that I'm going to share here is rocket science, but it still really can be hard to implement and sustain. So I've included a little context here from our virtual collaboration research. And as I've said, people are exhausted by too many meetings. They want those meetings to be better planned. And they'd like those clear expectations for things like when they need to turn on video, for being attentive. And around a third would also like limits on meeting number, meeting frequency, minimum separation time between meetings, things like that. And the slideshow of this cluttered, chaotic meeting landscape is that a lot of people are multitasking during meetings, and they even see that as a benefit of working virtually, that they can be in your meeting and also doing something else. So given this mess, how the heck do we keep people engaged? This is some advice from Iris Mansour, who I recently interviewed. She's an expert who coaches executives on running good meetings, including virtual and hybrid meetings. And I love her advice, and I think it applies very well to community meetings and interactions as well. She suggests for each meeting, you need to identify 4 things. The first is the bullseye, the anticipated outcome of the meeting. What is everybody going to walk away with? The second is the stakes, how the meeting ties to big picture goals, either for individuals or the organization. The third is around rules of engagement. These are things like, how are we going to use video? What level or type of interaction is expected? Are there any pre-reads or expectations coming into the meeting? And then finally, as the leader or facilitator, you need to know the cues. What are the signs that people are becoming disengaged or distracted? And that's your cue to move to a new topic or to change things up to lure people back into the meeting. So every community and every meeting is different, but here are a few suggestions that I think do apply pretty broadly. In general, shorter meetings work better than longer ones when you're virtual. People do start to zone out faster online. And you can also get more targeted in your topics by breaking into subgroups for shorter, more focused community conversations. I think a good rule of thumb is to break things up, mix things up every 10 to 15 minutes. Have a different speaker come on, stop for a question, play a video, do a poll, something that engages people's brain in a different way. And one format that we've seen work well for community meetings is instead of having 1 hour-long presentation by one subject matter expert, ask 3 subject matter experts to do shorter 10, 15-minute presentations on related topics. And then you can have conversation and Q&A in between. So decide how you want to deal with video. Video is engaging. It makes the meeting leader feel better because they can see everyone and they have a sense that people are paying attention. And it is useful for that social feedback and those cues we talked about on the last slide. But Zoom fatigue is real. It is exhausting to perform for the camera, especially when you're not engaged in dialogue. And if you're having a long meeting, it may make sense to, have everyone turn their cameras on for the meet and greet, maybe for the interactive discussion, but, have people switch off if they're not presenting or you're not talking, and they're just in listening mode. And if you can, get attendees involved using polls, chat, whatever response features you have in your platform. And then if a meeting is critical, set some expectations up front that you want people's full attention. Because I think if you make that compelling, then hopefully you can avoid some of that multitasking. So the last recommendation here is to help community members navigate the collaboration landscape. And I don't know how much, your COPs may do beyond, live meetings, whether they're virtual or face-to-face, but it helps to provide a more holistic community environment where people can find relevant resources, seek out and interact with members outside of the meeting structure, and providing that and coaching employees to use those capabilities of the community can really help with engagement. I think if all you have is a meeting once a month or once a quarter, it's hard to build those habits and get people truly engaged as community members and participants. So what we've seen over the last year is in the mad rush to facilitate collaboration, IT has installed lots of software and teams and departments are using a ton of different platforms and capabilities. And even within a stack like Microsoft or Google, the vendors in their infinite wisdom give you apps with overlapping capabilities. And the apps and the capabilities are constantly changing and evolving. And that's especially true when you're in the cloud. You can come in on Monday morning and things have changed. The buttons are in different places and you have different capabilities. So it's probably not surprising that in our virtual collaboration research, we see people really calling for guidelines to navigate collaboration options, to understand how to collaborate on documents, and figure out when, where, and how to post questions and requests. I think, people are legitimately confused. And none of us can control what Microsoft or Google or any other vendor put in front of users, but there are some things that community leaders can do to make this cluttered landscape easier for their members. One easy to access place where community information and resources are curated and available. If it takes more than a few clicks to find or to get to something, people will likely give in. And as integrated into the other places where they work as that can be, the better. Clarify how community members should interact with one another, the best places to ask questions, to share knowledge. And when somebody asks a question, make sure that they get a response of some kind. If people reach out and get crickets, then they're unlikely to do that again. And then the final thing I'll mention is that it really helps to set criteria for creating, joining, and being auto-added to communities and subgroups within communities. Um, People don't really want to be auto-added in most cases. That comes out clearly in the research. And they often would like some rules or criteria around who can join. And the presence of those criteria is linked to a wide range of positive outcomes, including better innovation and more satisfied collaborators. If your COP is designed to include a broad cross section of people, that's great. But you really may want some subgroups where experts or mid career people or people who are working on a specific niche topic can engage away from the larger COP. And I think that we've really seen some evolution in communities in that way. I think the prevailing wisdom 10 years ago was to let everybody see everything and be part of everything. But as that collaboration environment gets more cluttered and as people really want those safe spaces, I think it helps to have a balance of the public and the private, or at least semi-private in that case. So that's all I've got for you guys today. You'll see on the screen a variety of links to our virtual collaboration research, our communities of practice research and resources. APQC has all sorts of best practices, examples, tools and templates to get you started with communities of practice and to help you improve your communities and drive engagement. So I really encourage you to dig in on our online resource library. Please connect with us, reach out to us if you have any questions, and thank you so much for joining us today.